me.
I actually just.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So thanks for joining us. A few of you have been hanging in there for the last couple of minutes waiting for us to get started. We're really glad that you're here. And for those of you that don't know, this training is something that's very important to us. We work with so many different forest and nature schools, but it's certainly not the only arena where nature-based education takes place. So for us, we see the value in-home childcare and all kinds of daycare settings, and any of these alternative ways that children are being cared for, especially when they're very young and they're not school age yet. So we're excited to have Rhonda Pollock of the Pollywogs Nature Play School and Jessica Clayton from Riverside Rhymes. We're really excited to learn from them today because they both run nature-based in-home childcare programs. I think you're going to find they have a lot of insight and they're going to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time. So my name's Monica Wita-Lubinsky and I'm the director of AeroFans, but it just so happens that Rhonda and Jessica, they're both board members of our organization. And if you didn't know much about our organization before you saw this webinar, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and all we do is centered around nature-based early childhood education. We just know how meaningful and powerful outdoor learning can be, and so we do loads of training. We go to people's schools, we'll offer it online, we do wonderful training events. There's lots of different ways that you can get involved, and it's all possible because we have members. Memberships are direct donations to this work, and it's really the only way that we can make this possible. We don't have any big funds. There's no big foundation. There's no donor with some deep pockets. All of our work is based on our memberships, and so we're really glad that you're here. And just know that if you're not a member and this is not a good time for you, we completely understand. Definitely check out our scholarship opportunities because we're here to provide access to everyone who needs it, and that's also thanks to our members. And if you're a member, we always give really nice discounts on the training to thank you for your support. So as we get into it today, you're going to meet Rhonda, and she's going to tell you more about her program in Nantucket. And you're also going to meet Jessica Clayton, and her program in New Jersey. So with that, a couple of other little housekeeping items. You should be able to use the chat feature and reply all to everyone, and hopefully you're seeing everyone's responses as they come back. Occasionally people don't see them, so sometimes I try to send them back out just in case. But feel free to use that space for questions, and Jessica and Rhonda will follow up with any of those questions afterwards if they don't get to you in real live time today. With that, I think we're ready to move along. Did I do that right, Rhonda and Jessica?
That sounds great, Monica. Thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thanks, Monica.
So I am Jessica. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I've helped to run the Nature Preschool Ideas and Community group on Facebook for AeroFans, and I get to be their secretary, and it's a great honor. And I also run a home based childcare in New Jersey, right on the New Jersey shore. And I've been doing this for about 10 years now. And you'll get to see how my program has evolved in the time from when I started and to where we are right now. Rhonda, do you want to tell us a little bit about your program?
Sure. So I'm Rhonda Pollock, and as Monica said, I am based out of Nantucket, Massachusetts, beautiful little island, 30 miles out to sea. And I've been working with children for my whole professional adult life in one capacity or another. I've worked as a mental health counselor, and as a social worker, I was actually a child protective social worker for the state prior to starting my program. It's actually what led me to become a licensed family provider. While working as a social worker, I got to see in-home programs and children that were in our the state's custody. I was actually responsible for signing them up for a program. And when I saw how great that was, I decided that's the route that I wanted to go when I had children. So I started my program in 1998, and I started it out as a full-time traditional daycare. And then in 99, I closed down for a little bit. And then when I started back up at the end of 99, I decided to run my program as a preschool program. I wasn't cut out for full-time daycare with my own little children. And then in the early 2000s is when I discovered the nature piece that really kept me in this line of work. If it hadn't been for that, I probably would have closed up shop and gone back to social work. But finding that nature piece completely transformed my program. And like Jessica said, it has evolved over time and become what it is today. And it's really been nature-based for about 15 years now. Before I could even find any nature-based professional development for those in early childhood. So I feel blessed to be connected with ERA fans to bring this type of education, professional development to all of you today.
Okay, great. Hold on, sorry guys. Technical, there we go. So this is Lessons from Home. And we wanted to tell you about our programs and how we have transformed them to be almost more outside than it was in the beginning. And this webinar will also help you if you're just starting out. And the first few slides will be particularly focused on people who are just starting nature preschools or nature play schools or home daycare that are nature-based. And you just need to get your very first lesson. So here we go. So if you're just starting out, you should definitely start by calling your licensing department. Licensing can dictate how many hours you can be open, how many students you can have, how much you get paid in subsidy client fees. There also may be town ordinance that pertain to your business. So the very first step, if you're just opening up, is to call the licensing department so that you can find out what your regulations are. They differ drastically from state to state. For example, in New Jersey, you can be licensed or unlicensed, and it has no relevance on how many students you can have. You can only have 5 students. But in Massachusetts, you cannot operate a program at all without a license. If your state does allow for both licensed or unlicensed options, there are certain, strengths and weaknesses to each. Licensed programs can be eligible for subsidy payments, and I feel that this is why my program is licensed, because I want to offer equal access to all the people in my community, including low-income children. So I've decided to become licensed so that everyone has access to be part of my nature play school. I think that nature play schools and preschools and home daycares are often things that are only available to upper middle class parents who choose to place their kids in programs for part days. But my program is full day, it's full time, and it's available for subsidy kids, and that's why I have chosen to go the license route. And you also can get to be eligible for the food program if you're licensed. And for me, this helps offset some of the costs of running the daycare. So the food program will help. If you provide the food, then they will subsidize the cost of the food. And like we said before, unlicensed daycares can offer you less invasive regulation from the state. However, sometimes they're not even allowed at all. It depends on your state. So definitely call your state licensing office to find out what your regulations are. I think if you're just starting out, another really important thing to do is to write a business plan or to start thinking in a business mindset. You have to remember that if you're going to run a daycare, it is a business. You need to make a profit because you can't keep this job going unless, you can also provide for your personal family. I have learned a lot by visiting the Small Business Administration page and finding my local Small Business Development Center. It's a federally funded program So every state will have an office locally located to you. They're usually regional. Mine's about 10 miles away from me. And through that small business development center, you can take classes on things like how to write a business plan, how to come up with a marketing strategy, how to get funding. You can learn about accounting for your business. The classes are very affordable. They're designed for people who are just starting out, and I highly recommend them. You also may want to consult a lawyer for if your documents, your contracts, when you design them. And you can also get your own accountant. I am not very good with my taxes, so I have an accountant, and I appreciate their services very much. But there's also some great books by an author named Tom Copeland. You should definitely check them out. He has them on how to keep your daycare books, how to take care of your receipts, and to do that whole business records part of what it is to have a home daycare.
Okay, so here, it's when you're thinking about starting your own program in your home, one of the most important things to think about is, for those of you who don't currently have an existing program, is do you really want to be an early childhood educator? Maybe you're already working in a school setting or another childcare setting, a center-based. And this is, when you're deciding to do a program in your home, it's a very different from being in a setting with other employees and staff. And some things to consider when starting your own program, first and foremost, are the needs of your community. In order for you to be successful, will there be folks who will sign up? So find out what the needs of your community are. Second, do you plan to work alone or with an assistant? Working alone can be a very eye-opening thing for some. Some people flourish with it, and others not so much. I know in the state of Massachusetts, to have an assistant, to have a large group license, which is a license for 10 children with 2 adults, you cannot do that in the state of Massachusetts until you've been running your own program for 3 years. You could hire an assistant with 6 kids, but I don't know how profitable that would be if it's just you with 6 kids with another person. So that's something you definitely want to consider. Another very important piece is, will your program be full-time or part-time? Will you do full-time days like Jessica does, which I give her major props, because that was not for me with my own little family. So I do run my program Monday through Friday, 8:15 to 2. Those are my hours. The other thing you'll want to consider is, are you going to run a full year program? Are you going to do like sign up from September to September where people re-sign up each year, or will you do a school year program? I myself do run my program, as previously stated, as a preschool program, and it's from September to the first week of June, so parents sign up for that. And I also have the yearly tuition fees, and then I, over the years, developed several other programs, including a summer nature camp. And then I developed a nature club for school-age children. And it's an after-school program for kids ages 5 to, I think they're 9 now. I've pretty much had the same kids coming for the past several years. And then I also developed a forest school, an afternoon forest school, after I got my forest kindergarten teacher certification. I think it's almost 2 years ago. So each of those programs, people sign up for them individually, and that's worked out great for me, and they've all been very successful, which I can happily say.
That's wonderful.
So here is this picture. When I see these pictures, this is often like what you see when you're on Instagram or Facebook or people's websites. Of course, we're going to post those beautiful pictures that seem so idyllic, and our days can be you know, they're mostly wonderful, connecting children with the natural world. It's such a blessing. But there are things that you have to consider other than that. Right, like there, I'm laying on the ground with the children, looking up at the clouds. But then there's these things right here. It's also, this type of education is also risky. We are definitely into risky play, forms of risky play. We're constantly weighing the risks versus the hazards. And I highly suggest looking up, taking a webinar or some type of training in risky play, in learning how to, you know, tell the difference between risky play, a risk and a hazard, and also just getting that information like into your parent handbook and having conversations with your parents about this type of education, because it is different than the norm. Like children are climbing trees, and you need to figure out what your policy is going to be for climbing trees, for lifting heavy logs, like for stick play, and the dangers of those. But honestly, with risky play, the research is out there. It's out there now where you can show your parents risky play actually helps to develop resilient children. So I highly recommend reading much more on that, and you can find articles supporting that. The research is out there. So after we've talked about the bits of the business side, we should talk about, you know, what does nature-based mean? I realize that, you know, many of you today may have signed up for this because you're thinking, okay, I don't necessarily want to start a true nature-based program. I just want to get outside more with the kids. But for those of you, we will be shortly talking about specific things you can do, whether you want to be a true nature-based model or not, which you don't have to be. Getting kids out into nature is a huge thing, and especially during COVID, where a lot of people are moving in that direction. But for those who are considering switching a model, if you are currently running a program or starting up one, the terms, so I'll go over these. There are many terms regarding nature-based programs, as well as different models of nature-based early childhood education. However, the overall criteria is that nature is at the heart of everything the nature-based program does. From the program mission and philosophy, the classroom setup design, both inside and outside, and the curriculum, which is typically an inquiry-based emergent curriculum where nature play is highly valued. And for myself, I do run my program as a nature-based preschool, and I follow the guidelines that you can see. These guidelines on the Natural Start Association website, which we will have on a resource page. And it's basically the main criteria, which was established by Dr. Patty Bailey, who's a pioneer of research in the nature preschool movement, along with Ken Finch from Green Hearts, who I actually had the pleasure of a meeting last year at the Natural Start Conference, and sat on the side of him and got to tell him it was his Green Hearts where I saw what a nature-based preschool actually was, because prior to that, I had called my program a nature-inspired program. I didn't even know there were such things as nature preschool. But the main criteria for a nature preschool is that nature is the central organizing concept of the program, as previously stated in that last slide. That is basically that nature is the integrating thread that intentionally ties together the preschool's philosophy, methodologies, classroom design, outdoor spaces, and public identity. A nature preschool's program is based on high quality practices of both early ed and environmental ed. And then a nature preschool program uses the natural world to support dual goals that address both child development and conservation values. These include the development of the world of the child in all domains: cognitive, physical, social, emotional, aesthetic, and spiritual, and the development of an ecological identity or environmental ethic. And that last one right there is the most important for me, with helping the whole child develop through this type of education. It really is quite amazing.
Every once in a while, it doesn't want to click to the next slide. Sorry, guys. There we go. So this is really good news. If you are thinking about starting a nature-based program, both Rhonda and I have been very successful with our different types. Like I said, my family childcare is a full day program. It's for, it's designed for working parents to have, daycare all day long while they're at work. And it's a long day. It's 7:30 to 5:30. And I have a full wait list, and so does Rhonda. I think it's really interesting, Rhonda's different types of programming that she has, and she still is able to fill all those different kinds of small groups, camps, after school programs. It's a very marketable program. And if you are transforming yourself from a traditional daycare, or a traditional family childcare to a more outdoor program, I just want you to know that this is something that you can do and still, make money and get kids outside. And it's really a wonderful way for your whole school to be, both for you yourself, just to the great feeling of being outside all day with the kids, and yet also for the children to have access to nature. So if you're just starting out, one of the things that you need to think about is market yourself. Rhonda and I both agree that word of mouth is absolutely your best bet. These other strategies that I have on here are things that you can do in the beginning to get that word of mouth going. You can get a website, you may have Facebook pages and Instagrams and Twitter pages, on everything on social media. You can have the Craigslist posts. But I think that the most successful things that I did was things that in the very beginning were things that got me out into community and talking to people about my program, because that's really your first step into word of mouth. So I participated in like green fairs, I joined a mom's club, I had trial classes, and in all those times I was able to tell the parents about why nature preschool is important, and why getting children outside every day was important, and all the things that I valued, and all the things that I could share with their children. And those conversations got me people into my business, and then their parents recommended me to other people, and now I'm a staple in the community where I live, and people know that if they're looking for an outdoor program for their children, they can come to me. These are just some other things that I have. I have a sign outside in front of my house, a couple of them. You can see, this just helps in the very local community. If someone new moves in, they'll be like, oh, there's a daycare there. I didn't realize. This is another really good app that I found for marketing. It's called Canva. You just download it to your phone, and it just allows you to use their templates to create a little ad. So if you're going to try and market with a Facebook promotion or something like that, your ad can be a little bit more complex, have a little bit more details right on the pictures, and add whatever kind of marketing that you think will sell in your local community. I always put on my marketing materials that I provide food, because it turns out that that's a big selling point in my neighborhood. Moms and dads didn't like to pack lunches, but for your community, you should figure out what they want, what they are really looking for in a program. And then you can make these little ads with this Canva app, and it was completely free. Professional development. So Ron and I have both been able to go to learn from a lot of different people. And I think professional development is key when you're first starting your business, because it gives you a strong foundation of knowledge that you can share with the people that you want to join your preschool or daycare or home daycare. So if you want to talk about outdoor education and how it helps kids, attending some kind of professional development will give you all of the knowledge that you need. So you can come to us, of course, AirFans, Eastern Region Association of Forest and Nature Schools. We have outdoor teacher retreats, and coming up very soon, there's a nature-based teacher certification. It's a very complex, involved program. This year, we're offering it online, which is new for us. And it provides you with a teacher certificate. There's also the Alliance for Environmental Education, the Natural Start Alliance, and your local licensing resource center, the people who give you your license, they also provide professional development. Some of it's good, some of it's not as good. But they do give us some good foundations. And we also have state or county chapters of your National Association for Young Children, or NACY, and they're all great resources for professional development. Ron, do you have anything to add here?
I definitely agree. Doing as much, professional development as you can in this particular field. There's a lot out there now. When I first transitioned, when I was first transitioning to a nature, I was calling it a nature-inspired program because I didn't even know about nature-based. There wasn't really anything out there. I think I first found something in 2010 or something like that, with Growing Up Wild and such. And I just took basically anything that I could find. I did find environmental education, professional development, but back then in the early 2000s, it really wasn't geared towards early childhood development. And right now, I mean, this movement is even, prior to COVID, you could go on the news, you could go on social media and platforms, and you'll see nature and children. In the nature and children movement is like fast moving movement, and there are a lot of people that want this type of education for their children, and I think there are a lot of professionals who are wanting to go this route as well.
And so we think that's really key to getting parents on board. So that's why we chose to talk about professional development first, because when you bring those ideas that you learn from your professional development to the parents, you share your enthusiasm. This is something you can really do when you're transforming your program from a traditional daycare to a more nature-based daycare, or even just changing your program so that it includes more hours outside. Say to them, hey, I went to this training, it taught me so much, I have read these books, and your enthusiasm and all of the things that you've learned, you share it with them, and they will get on board, and they will be like, oh, I think it's wonderful that my child gets to spend an extra 2 hours outside every morning, even though we used to only spend half an hour. And these are all the reasons why outdoor experiences are wonderful for kids. Another way to do that is to post articles on your website or on your social media pages that emphasize the value of nature education, because in the process of reading them, they will educate themselves on why this getting kids outside is so important. Another great thing to do, I always do this, is I post pictures of what we're doing, and then I explain what kind of learning is taking place. I think it really helps parents to understand what a process art is teaching kids, or what digging in the dirt is teaching them. When you post a picture of a kid in the sand and you say, isn't this great? They're like, oh, my child is definitely having fun. But when you explain that they're working their muscles and they're using their fine motor skills, and this is how they prepare themselves for writing, and this is how they learn to communicate with each other, and to negotiate terms, and to understand outdoor and all the science that comes into, and measurement and math. When you post articles and you post pictures that share these things with parents, then you really get them on board. And like I said, we've had very good success about filling up our programs, so it is a very marketable technique.
Jessica, I would like to add with that, that for me, when I did start out with moving into a nature-based program, because there wasn't much out there like that, documentation was huge. And I actually created a template and to talk about all the learning that was happening in every domain. Like normally we have our, we do our assessments with children in all the different areas, but I created something, a template that I could use that showcased the learning that was happening in nature, breaking down that learning. And I do think documentation is a really big piece of this type of educational model. And I would suggest to people to take a webinar, to take a training. There's books out there as well. I believe one is called Lens on Learning, and it talks all about documentation and to just help break down what that learning is, and for parents to see that it is more, well, it is play, but it's through play, children are learning.
Right. And we also, both of us clearly in these programs, invite our parents out on the out with the kids to learn about, you know, what we're doing, so that parents can see what we do every day. And, you know, in those moments, we get to really connect about how great these experiences are for kids. Okay. The next thing we want to talk about is getting your contract and handbook to reflect your mission and your beliefs. Now, a contract is a document. It contains the financial and legal agreement between you and the parents and guardians. So this is not going to have your policies or your mission in it. It's going to have things like what days and times you are having your care, what your registration fee, the tuition, your payment schedules, what late payment fees are, when your school is open and closed, holding spot policies, and how to terminate your contract. This is a legal document. It has to do a lot with finances. However, we think it's very important to, if you're changing from a traditional daycare to a nature-based daycare, to update your policy document, your handbook, to reflect that. So there's some things that we, Rhonda especially thought it was important to have your change of clothes policy and your what to wear policy. I also include an outside play policy. You can see there's all different policies that I include in my particular handbook. These policies should reflect the fact that you're going to be outside. So you need to talk about what kind of gear they need and how to handle muddy clothes and how they will be sent home. So that when your parents or your new parents come into your program and they came from, say, a traditional daycare or a traditional daycare setting, they know how to prepare for what it's going to look like when kids spend the majority of their time outside, and to, you know, to have the right materials on hand to prepare for that. Anything else, Rhonda?
No, I think that's good. You know, how basically talking about what your philosophy, your mission is, and all that, for it to be very clear as to how you plan to run your program, so that parents know at sign up. It's so important to have parents on board with what your mission is, and right from the get-go.
And
Yes.
I will just remind everyone, if you want to jump in with a question, feel free to pop a question in the chat. And if Rhonda or Jess don't see it, I am happy to jump in and let them know.
Thanks, Monica. So here we just want to talk about how our program have evolved, how they've changed. And you can see over here, my very first advertisement. This is a lovely room that I created in my house. It's so pretty. As soon as I started my actual program, I realized that we could not even use this room for the daycare because it's on the second floor and there's no bathroom on the same floor as this room. So I thought it would be so wonderful to have the kids here in this room, and I designed it so wonderfully. And no, we never even used it. So you have to remember that when you make these plans for what you think your home-based daycare is going to look like, it may not exactly be what your home-based daycare really looks like. And you can see that now I run much more outdoor program. That's a picture of 2 kids coloring outside, and the art area transformed from an indoor style art area to art materials that you can just bring outside every day. So starting and running a business is a process. Again, if you are moving from a program that's typically inside, you know, most of your day and only outside for short parts of your day, and you're moving maybe perhaps because of COVID to a more outdoor model, absolutely understand that running a business is a process, and it's perfectly you should just roll with the changes, and parents will roll with those changes too, as long as you explain to them the reason behind what you're doing. You can change your plans, you can alter your mission, you can redesign your program as you grow as an educator, as you take more professional development and learn more about what you want to do with children. It's okay to change your model based on what you think is the right thing for kids. Moving your philosophy from perhaps a 50% outside program to a 100% out program is completely up to you. And as long as you continue to tell your parents how you're making these changes and why you're making these changes, then they should hopefully will get on board with the changes that you are ready to make. It turns out, like I said before, that some of the things that the ideas about what my program was going to be like didn't end up being practical at all, or they didn't end up being marketable, or they didn't end up working for the community that I was in. And it wasn't just in line with my evolving vision. When Ron, do we want to talk a little bit about play and how we both started out as play-based models?
Yeah,
You know
sure.
what, Rhonda, I'm so sorry. There is a quick question that I thought we should bring up before we talked about that. And
Sure, go ahead.
somebody is asking about rain and asking, if there's rain for a whole week, would you still be outside for the whole day, or what might that look like?
So for me, I do take children outside in all weather, including rain. And the children have, so my day is just shy of 6 hours. So it's 5 hours and 45 minutes. So we normally are outside for at least 75% of our day, but sometimes 100% of our day. And I do have, I now have a lean-to shelter, but that's new. Prior to the lean-to shelter going in this past year, I would have tarps set up in my outdoor classroom, but we also venture off, and the children have rain gear. So it's really important that they have rain gear. And rain boots, and I actually ended up purchasing sets of those, I want to say maybe 5 years ago, because it was so hard sometimes when people would forget them, and if one child didn't have it, it affected the whole group. So back to, will we be outside for the whole day? If it's a torrential downpour and we can't do anything, we will go inside. Definitely we'll go inside if it is hazardous. If there's thunder and lightning, we definitely will go inside. But if it's raining, a steady, heavy rain that's not blowing wind in your face, yes, we have stayed out all day. And having that proper gear, children being dressed correctly is huge. That makes all the difference. It's a make or break. And the same thing for winter. We are out for hours outside in the cold, in the snow, because the children are dressed appropriately. And the children, you often do not hear, the only time you hear a child complain is if they are underdressed. That's it. They love it. I love it. And you have to make sure that you yourself have the proper gear as well, because a cold teacher will not want to stay out as long. But, if you're just starting a program or just transitioning or to a nature-based program, or not even nature-based, just want it to be just outdoor because of the current COVID situation going forward, it doesn't have to be all day. It has to work for you. It has to be something that's going to work with you. You have to be comfortable, and your take on the outdoors is huge, and how children perceive the outdoors. So if you're complaining about the outdoors, or you are having negativity, the children are going to pick up on that. And it really, your attitude is really a big reflection as to this type of program. So I would really think about that, and you can go slowly. You can go slowly until you feel comfortable.
And a couple of follow-up questions that are really great follow-up questions and not at all a surprise, is just about, do you ask parents to purchase the rain gear, and is it required? And I think maybe you started to get at that by saying, you keep some on hand in case parents forget. often the parents will provide it, and depending on the type of program, sometimes you have funding to have a class set. So I think it would probably depend, but that would be one question. And then along those lines, what would you use on their hands in the rain?
So I happen to have rain/mud mittens, and I believe that the company that I got them from is called Pollern O'Praya.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Pirate or
And she does have that organization. They offer a discount for programs that they say nature-based or outdoor programs. So anybody that contacted us said you were going to wanted to get children outside more. They are expensive, but I've just discovered you can actually find them on Amazon, and apparently they're much cheaper on Amazon. So I would check out Amazon and just type in rain mittens or waterproof mittens. And the same thing with the original rain suits that I got are the Tuffo Muddy Buddies.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to think of it. I want to say
That's what I use too.
was it $20 for one, or was it? I also got a discount with that directly from that company. I think they're based out of British Columbia, and I get a really good discount with them as well. But again, they also now offer them on Amazon as well. So when I first started nature-based, I did not require the parents to, no, I did require the parents to have the proper gear, but people didn't always bring it. So that's why I started purchasing it myself. I do receive a $75 a year supply fee, and I use that supply fee to purchase those rain suits, and then later to purchase those mud rain mittens.
Yes, and I'll just say, as a family child care provider who serves a lower income community, I don't actually have money buddies, but I do have extra raincoats, rain pants, and rain boots on hand, and I require them, but I always have extra here, so that if anyone forgets them or anyone doesn't have them, if the parents ever came to me and said, hey, I just can't get a raincoat this year, it's off season or whatever, I'm really struggling financially, there would be an outpouring of help from either me or the other families in the daycare. I'm sure that we could get any student the materials they needed to get outside. When you set your policies in your handbook, that really helps to let parents know, like, oh, I'm gonna need rain boots for this daycare. That way, they already know what they're getting into when they join.
And to add to that, Jessica, I have told parents to check like the local thrift stores, because you can often find definitely raincoats and rain boots. But I also ask parents when their children are outgrowing their gear, if they want to donate it to the program, so that we always have extras here. And over the years, some of the kids haven't liked those Muddy Buddy rain suits because of the material. It's not soft, it's kind of noisy. Most of them don't mind them at all, but some did and had some tactile issues, and they purchased their own. So I have about half who bring their own, and then the other half they use what I have. So I always have stuff available. And I will say that those one-piece Muddy Buddies, they can be a pain with going to the bathroom outside if you need to do a nature pee, because it's one piece. So I ended up also purchasing some rain pants, so that some kids, they can have the choice of wearing the rain pants with a raincoat, and then it's easier for that nature pee.
Yeah, some people like those rain bibs too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most of my kids have the rain bibs now with that Pollern O'Praya brand, and they're really, really nice, but they are very expensive, even with the discount.
Yes.
So now ready for me to talk about play-based?
Yes, and I know people are really excited to learn about some activities too.
Okay,
I think we'll go quick.
So both Jessica and I we both started out with play-based models right from the beginning. So we always believed in a play-based education and knew that, play was the work of the child.
Yes. you can see that in the beginning, like this just to give you an example of like a program, how it evolves. Before I had my own home daycare, I am a New Jersey certified teacher to teach preschool through 3rd grade and also kindergarten through 5th. So I worked in publicly funded preschools, and I was extensively trained in creative curriculum. When I first started my program, I did a lot of open-ended art materials and open-ended play, but I didn't have the same dedication to emergent curriculum that I do now. And when I initially started, I would do something like you can see in this picture of the Valentine's Day program, and I would say, okay, it's time for small group, and we're going to make Valentine's Day cards, and you can make them any way you want, but this is the and I would teach about Valentine's Day and why Valentine's Day was important. And even though it was open-ended, it was also very much a lesson from the teacher, from me telling the kids about Valentine's Day and why it was so important. And later, I have developed, my program has changed and evolved over the years, and it's much more child-led now. So I don't take the kids to the river and say, hey, we're gonna look down and turn over these rocks and check out the mollusks that we find here and look at all of the oysters that are on the ground. I let the kids come to the river, explore the river, turn over the rocks, find the mollusks, find those oysters, and then they come to me with questions, and I get to be like a source for them, a resource for them. Like, what is this? And I get to say, oh, this is what this is. And what I see from learning like this, from emergent learning, is that the kids are fully invested. When I teach them a lesson about oysters, that because they were questioning me, they are so completely engaged in what they are learning. And this is why I have really changed from a more teacher directed program to a more emergent program, because I love to watch the kids' faces light up as they learn something that they very much want to learn. They're so excited to learn. I mean, in this particular picture, the kids are very excited to be throwing rocks into the river, and we have discussions about the rings that come out, how far they can throw, and we talk about how strong their muscles are and what the different shapes of the rocks are, and we learn all sorts of really important, valuable preschool lessons. And I'm not bringing those shape pictures to them, they're showing me the shapes that they find, and I find that those lessons are wonderful and worthwhile, and that is how my program has changed. And so here we just wanted to say that the very first step of getting kids outside and having a more nature-based approach is to just spend more time outside. And like we just addressed about the playing in the rain, for me, a big change in New Jersey, it gets pretty cold in the winter, and it can be 20 degrees for days on end. And a big change for me was just making the commitment to say, you know what, even it's been 20 degrees for a week straight, we are still going to get that out there. I'm going to get the kids the proper gear. If they need wool thermal underwear, or I need wool thermal underwear, we're going to make sure that we have them and get them on. And you can see right here, we're just talking about gloves. It made me laugh a little, because as soon as I get these wonderful gloves, the kids rip them off. It doesn't matter how cold it is outside or there's snow on the ground. They somehow love to feel the ground and the earth between their fingers. And I'm constantly putting gloves on and taking mittens off and putting them back on, and making sure that we have them all, because I was the block. I was the thing that was holding us back from being out there all the time. And as soon as I brought the children outside, they just showed me what a wonderful experience it could be. Okay, so we're going to get into a little bit more details about how you can change your outdoor space and give you more specific ideas. So one of the ways we did that was both Rhonda and I, she has a really beautiful, I can't wait to show you the pictures of her outdoor classroom, but we started thinking about how could we take an indoor classroom, what all the things that we normally provide indoors, and bring them outside. So we talked about personally and ourselves, we thought about how can we get all those elements of an indoor classroom, how can we bring all those elements to our outdoor classroom and get the kids learning in all of the same ways, but just outside. And this is, if you are, again, if you are someone who's trying to think about how to deal with COVID, this is a great way to think about it. Look at your indoor classroom, look at the dramatic play area, look at the science and nature explore area, look at your cozy reading spaces, and then look out your outdoor space and think, how can I get this outside? And here we go, very specifics. Okay, sorry for me to keep talking. This happens to be my slide because this is my program. One of the very first things I did was I took a sand area that was very tiny. If you can see on the picture on the left, it was just a tiny square box. And I got a dump truck to come in and dump a whole pile of sand, and I just lined it with logs right on top. I didn't even end up digging down to make it any deeper. We made like a little bit of a hill with the sand, and this, to this day, this was 8 years ago. To this day, I have not needed to get any more sand, and I have not needed to update this area in every way. And the kids play here every single day that we are outside in the outside classroom. It's big. It's about 20 by 20 is the space that I created for digging. It helps their like core muscles. It helps their fine motor muscles. It helps their large gross motor development. And it is one of the best things that I have ever done. And it was very affordable. Sand, a truck full of sand. At the time, I had gotten a coupon to get the dump truck to come. I think that the whole thing only cost me about $120 for all that sand and the logs, which were donated free. Okay, go ahead, Rhonda.
Okay, so here is some mud kitchens, and mine is the picture to the left, and it looks like an actual kitchen area. But that is a few years old, and all of those materials were actually repurposed. The sink that my husband was able to get from job sites that job sites were just getting rid of, and the same thing with the wood. The wood was actually from one of my families who was putting in a new floor and then some pallets. So, but prior to having that really great mud kitchen setup, we just used to use tree cookies and some planks of wood. Like, you really don't have to have anything like that's so set like that right there, because when the kids were building it themselves, that was they were working on engineering skills in addition to working with mud. And I have to say, mud is just phenomenal. Creating mud with dirt, the kids are learning so much. It's sensory, it's science, it's math. And some kids, when they first start out working with mud, if you don't have a mud kitchen or have mud play in your program, I highly suggest that you start, and you can start slowly. Like, some children don't like the feel of mud, and they may just use a spoon to start mixing or a stick, but then eventually they may get into it. I would definitely have a water source for children to, of course, mix with the dirt to create the mud, but also for washing hands, because I do have some children that as soon as they're done, they quickly want to wash their hands and get it off.
Yes, and I completely agree. And you can see the pictures on the right. This is my mud kitchen is a little bit less fancy. It's just a table. I'm sorry, an old door that I laid on top of logs and secured tree stumps. And it doesn't really matter as long as they had a flat surface, and you can bring your indoor pots and pans from your play center inside and from your dramatic play center, and the kids will have a ball with it. And this, you can see in the bottom picture, my sand area is right there. So some kids, like Rhonda said, didn't love the sensation of the mud, but they were perfectly comfortable with wet sand. And so having these different options available allowed them to have like the sensory level that they were comfortable with. And there's even like wood chips there. I mean, there's a lot of different options for them to mix and to create and to use. And the mud, when you're using a dramatic play center indoors, you may have like a plastic apple that you're using, and the play is a lot less complex in terms of cooking and measurement. But when you have an actual, like a wet, soggy sand or the mud or in the wood chips, the feeling of cooking that they that they feel like the kids are so proud. They're like, look at this cake that I made. Or my son knows that I have my personal favorite food is sushi. So he's constantly giving me all of these very fancy mud-based sushi rolls that he creates.
I want to jump in and just share a question, and that is about issues that you might have with the sandbox. Do you ever run into in terms of licensing?
So
Go
do you
ahead,
want to
Monica.
Jessica, or
Well, since it was my sandbox, I'll just say that I have a tarp that I lay over the top. The licensing in my state just requires that you have like a way to cover it.
yes,
So that was all I needed. So at the end of the day, I just pull a giant tarp over the top.
and that's the same for Massachusetts. I do have a cover for the sand area that I have. I have covers that go over the sand. And also because I used to have a cat, and I was like, okay, you have to make sure that's always covered and that kitty can't go out there, or any other maybe feral cats, because there are feral cats around on Nantucket. So you have to make sure you always cover it every day.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to do this one, Jess, or me?
No, go ahead, Rhonda. I feel like I've been talking a lot.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Well, so art can happen anywhere. It can be, as you can see here, it can be as easy as a basket full of art supplies, paper, and some clipboards. You can bring that outside. Now, I know, like, going forward with COVID, that the children have to have, I'm going to make them individual containers where they have their own individual pencils and various things for activities. And then I'll store them in a watertight container. And I actually just purchased a small shed so that I can keep that stuff all outside. But you know, you can do nature art, and that's what my kiddos are doing there in both the bookend pictures. They're actually working with some mud paint, and so you don't even need actual paint. If you want to, go ahead, go for it. My children also love to just paint with water, with a bucket, and with water and paintbrushes, or with sticks. And they will do it for hours. And the great thing about painting with water is it evaporates. And so there's a lesson in and of itself. And then they'll go back and they'll recreate the same thing or something new.
Mm-hmm. So it's a science experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, outside, there's a lot. As long as you think outside the box, you can definitely create a lot of the things that you have inside your classroom, in addition, right outside. So I had let the kids paint right on the side of my shed. That was because I couldn't at the time I didn't want to invest in one of those really nice outdoor easels. So we just designated an area of this shed that they could use as an easel. And I just used water-based, and actually I watered it down, tempera paints. And then when the rain came, it washed away.
And as we can see on the left, I use the fence line to hang up wet paint pictures. And I also write the children's name on the clothespin. So that way when it's wet, I don't have to handle it too much. And then the projects, whatever they did, the artwork actually, not project, is right there. And then they can take it home at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. So dramatic play, and when you think of your dramatic play center, sometimes it's you're thinking of dress up clothes, but it's also about playing in the house, or playing house. So my kids, I have two different kinds of house play available, in addition to the mud kitchen, which is sort of a cooking area. Is I have these little houses in the backyard, the little plastic Fisher-Price playhouses, and I see so much amazing dramatic play develop around these houses, and amazing social skills, because who's allowed in, who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, who's the bear, who's the rabbit, whatever dramatic play scenario they're creating, they use these little houses to create an inside and an outside, and the social skill development and dramatic play skills that come from playing in those houses is really phenomenal. And in some ways, my indoor classroom really didn't allow for that, because the good guy, bad guy play was too big and too rough for inside. But those little houses create a space for that whole type of play to develop. And the other thing we do is I have these big construction materials, and they build their own houses. This is a fort. So we're talking about rainy days. This is one of the things that the kids did on a rainy day. They built a dry place, a dry fort. So they asked for a tarp. So this happens to be the tarp that you are asking about that covers the sand. This is that tarp. They used it to build the roof of this little play space. And you can see that that's a crib rail, an old one that was broken, and milk crates. Milk crates are a wonderful, versatile, loose part. They use them constantly in my program. I only have about 12 of them, and they are some of the most coveted materials in the outdoor classroom because they are so versatile. They're steps, they're seats, they're chairs, they're walls, and the kids really use them in the most amazing ways. And this when they build their own fort, there's a whole another level of skill set they're using, and it's really about like engineering and math, and again that negotiation. Where's this crate going to go? Where's that crate going to go? How is this wall going to go? And we need it to be higher in the middle. And there's so many social skills and so much engineering that happens in order to make that fort happen. Now this one, the kids had built all by themselves, but sometimes I help them to get it just right. Bring in a chair from over here, and then I become like the consultant. How can I get it higher over here? And then we talk it through. And I just think that these big, large play materials really make your dramatic play area so much more than so much more than it could be in the classroom.
I agree, Jessica. And if you have an area that is big enough to have large branches and sticks, I would highly recommend that because that's an excellent option. I expanded my outdoor classroom last year, and so now I'm able to incorporate a large a den and fort building area that I didn't have prior. We would always go off every day off site, and we would do that type of nature play elsewhere. But now that I have the expanded classroom, I actually have a small forest area there, and the children build with large branches and sticks, and pretty much daily they do this. And one of my rules is big sticks are for big places. You really do need that space for safety issues. So if you don't have that space, then I wouldn't recommend having those large branches and sticks, but you could have smaller loose parts like tree cookies and just smaller sticks to work and play with. But if you can fit that, then I would. And here, Jessica, do you want me to talk about this here, or do you want to?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so building outdoors, it's all about loose parts. And for me, over the past several years, I just have I've transitioned to all natural loose parts. That's pretty much all I have in my outdoor space, other than the items that are in the sand area and the mud kitchen, which are like like buckets, metal buckets, and some spoons and bowls and things of that nature. But otherwise, it's all natural loose parts. And when people first come to my program, you can tell they're like, where are the toys? But these are the toys, and it's amazing to see what the children create, like in their mind, like the symbolic play that happens, like right there on the left-hand side. Those are computers. See, you can see they're computers, and that was their hair salon that they set up, and they were taking appointments for their hair salon, and that's the office. So the learning is so deep and so rich that takes place, like just the organizing for what they're going to create, like to create a computer, like wow. And then Jessica, you have a lot of large loose parts, which I think is so neat. And I am thinking I am going to have to get some of those the crates, because I like the crates. I think that's a great idea. Do you want to talk about those at all?
Sure.
I think people in the chat are responding to that too. And I also just wanted to mention that somebody asks, is it ever hot where you guys live? So I'm guessing that we might have some more southern folks that are wondering
Okay.
about shade.
Shade. Okay.
Oh,
So, yes, so it is hot. In New Jersey, it's hot. For about 2.5, 3 months, it gets pretty hot. I would say July, August, September, half of June. It's pretty, can get to be like 90s, routinely. And let's see, I guess like we don't have that. I didn't bring that many summary pictures, but the picture on the bottom here to the, with the wood, that is in the summer. It just must have been a little cloudy that day.
so I
But
can, oh,
go
go ahead.
ahead. Yeah, I was going to say we do a lot of water play. I just wanted to get there. We do a lot of water play in the summer. So you can see there's gutters here. This happened to be a rainy day, but those gutters very good, useful in the summer because everyone's getting wet. Also, we use a mister. I bought a special mister, but you really could just use a hose with a nozzle that has a mister setting and prop it up somewhere. Both of those things really help to keep us cool when it is 90 degrees out and everyone's in their bathing suits.
And for myself, prior to expanding my outdoor classroom, it was a fairly small area, and I did not have shade. And now I have so much shade back there because of all the trees. When we took the fence line down and took out all the pretty much most of the understory so that I could have that forest area. But prior to that, I used I had this really large it was a tarp, but not a regular tarp. It was specific, a sunshade, like a sun sail.
Mhm.
And my husband put 2 hooks on each side of the house, and then we connected it to the fence line so that I could have shade because it would get really hot. And then the front area of my house is it's a grassy, it's the grass lawn, and we would go over there for the water play mostly, and do like sprinkler, and I would have a water table over there as well, and buckets and stuff like that to cool down, and then we would go back to the other side. But now I do have plenty of shade. So that is definitely something to consider if you are going to be outside,
Right.
what you'll need. Yeah.
And depending on your licensing requirements, what your state requires, you can have pools. I mean, I used to be able to have a kiddie pool. Now we have to have a chlorinated pool, which totally makes sense because of the virus. But you can still have a pool in New Jersey. So there, you can definitely allow water play. Good.
Okay.
These are my really big loose parts. I call them my extra large. So this to the left here, this is another rainy day picture. We really do play in the rain. This is a winter rainy day, and you can see everyone's in their winter coats and it's raining. And they used it's a pond mold. A neighbor of mine donated it to the daycare. They said, could you use this? I think they thought I was going to make a pond, but that's not what I did with it. I just left it out for the kids, and they make little forts with it, and they flip it upside down and jump on it like it's a trampoline, and then they tip it all the way on its back, and it's like a boat, and it's used often. And another thing I do is we have a very large loose parts slide. It's just a loose slide, and when the kids decide where they want the slide to go, I attach it to whatever place they've decided they want their slide. So in this case, right now it's attached to the fence there, and they're using it in their sand play.
That's wonderful that you can move it around.
Yeah, really, they love it because when they get a new place, they're like, it's like we have a new toy.
Yeah, I might have to take that idea too. That's an inspiration.
Climbing. So I was just my shot is this little playground over here on the right. I don't have great climbing trees. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I don't have great climbing trees, so I just had to buy a playground. I mean, not everything about my home daycare is ideal. So we have a little plastic playground.
I am lucky that I do have some climbing trees, and the 2 pictures to the left, those are actually, that's not on my property, that's off-site for climbing.
both Rhonda and I we bring gardening into our program. None of us, we both conceded in the beginning when we were talking together that neither of us have particularly good green thumbs. We have just planted things that were easy. So I just wanted to let you know that I was very successful with pole beans. That's so some wood and pole beans planted around the edge of the wood. And I've done it every year since I started doing it. And pretty much every year it looks like that by the end of the summer. And the kids just pluck those green beans right off the pole and eat them raw with such enthusiasm. And I think that really gardening, it's not about the product, what you end up. The green bean isn't really what it's for. It's the kids' wonder as they watch something change and evolve over the season, from a tiny seed that they planted in the ground to this amazing thing that they get to eat.
Jess,
See
yeah.
the cycle of the plant.
And Jessica, we do have a question. Someone's asking how you attach it. I'm not sure if they're referring to maybe the bean pole, probably the bean poles,
So-
how you actually construct that.
So that is just
The slide. I'm so sorry. They were referring to the slide.
Okay, so the slide, that slide is attached with screws. It's just the way that slide is designed. At the end of the slide, there's like 2 holes where you can attach. You're supposed to attach it onto the playground piece, and I just screw the slide into the fence.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and the bowl beans are just, that's sort of like you lay 3 sticks together and you tie them at the top, and then the other one's just sort of laid around in a circle. Rhonda, you want to talk here?
Yeah. So I will say that gardening, as Jessica was saying, when she and I were first talking about gardening, I was a novice gardener. Everything that I've learned is just self-taught, and just from doing gardening with my own children. I had a garden that was created by my husband and my children many, many years ago as a Mother's Day gift. And it's just grown and expanded, and it's part of my outdoor classroom. And I've learned more along with the children, and it's just such a wonderful experience. And there's so much science and math that's happening. And the picture in the middle was the most exciting. This was the most exciting gardening experience that I've ever seen with the kids. We grew potatoes. That was the first time. I've been wanting to do it for years, and finally did it last year. And we grew small red, purple, and gold potatoes. And let me tell you, when the kids harvested those potatoes, dug deep down into that soil and plucked them out, I did get lots of video too, because it was so thrilling for them to see, like, wow, from this little tiny potato seed grew all these potatoes. And then they harvested them, they washed them at our little outdoor spigot, and then they counted them, sorted them, and so that each one got a fair share. And then they took them home in their little paper bag, and then they cooked them with their families. So to see food where it comes from the very beginning, from seed all the way to harvest, and then to actually eat it, it's priceless. And I highly suggest that everybody do some sort of gardening. And you don't have to have a garden bed. It can just be in pots. It can be in recycled yogurt containers. It can be in it could be in a rinsed out, recycled milk jug. So you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have a green thumb. You just have to have the will to want to do it, and the kids will love it.
Yes, I just wanted to be full disclosure. See the peppers that Rhea labeled to the right, that never grow. So it's really okay. That's part of the gardening process. The kids learn from that too.
Exactly.
And there was one other question that someone was asking in terms of the nearby spaces that you use. Do you ever go to any beyond spaces that have more wild nature, like parks or other settings, or are you always on your grounds for liability reasons?
That's coming up real soon.
Yes, we're going to definitely address that in a couple slides to come.
Great.
So here we're just saying that you don't really need to create an outdoor science center. It's sometimes good to bring out things like magnifying glasses, but science is so enmeshed in our outdoor world that that is one thing that you don't even actually have to put any extra effort into. So if you're looking at this picture, there is a praying mantis that this little boy is looking at on one of the posts, at the railing posts, and he's got his face so close to it and he's looking at it so carefully. And I know this child well, and I remember his apprehension, like, "Ooh, it's a bug and it's so big," and but the then he really got close to it and he was like, "There's its head and its eyes," and the amount of scientific thinking that happened in just this moment was way more than he ever was going to get from the Pre-Mantis book that I have in my classroom.
I do have, I tend to have a lot of field guides for flora and fauna in our area, and the kids pick those up and they look for, they check out what they're looking at and they search through the book. And they actually really learn how to use them, and the magnifying glasses and the binoculars. So like those real tools, you know, children as young as 3, which tends to be the youngest that I have in my program. But it's really great to watch and see how they use those tools over the years that they're with you.
Yes. So for an outdoor reading area, I happen to have a couch that the kids can read at, and I just bring a basket of books out. The books in the basket are rotated, and the kids can have access to it anytime they like. But I cannot emphasize enough the value of a hammock in your program for a quiet space and for a reading space. You just bring the books right out there, and then you have your library area. And you're bringing literacy out there, and as long as you incorporate some reading time from you as the teacher, a large group read or a small group read, or just a child running over to you with a book and your lap, you'll get that literacy instruction in.
So I do also bring out a basket with books, and as I was saying, I'm going to have a big storage outside, so I'll be leaving the books. I'll have a supply of books right in that storage. And I do have a hammock also, but for me, Jessica, I'm not going to be able to use it this summer because, or with COVID at all, at least during this phase that we're in right now in Massachusetts, unless I have individual hammocks. And I honestly am not going to purchase individual hammocks because it would take up so much space to have that space that you need around it for when they swing, because my kids also kind of like to use it as a swing. But when it's not COVID, I do highly recommend it. But if you were going to use it during COVID, you technically, at least for Massachusetts, you have to wash it. Basically after each child, it has to be cleaned. You can only have one child use it. So yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I have to write at the end of every day. So I've been using an disinfectant spray for fabrics, but
okay.
cleaning it is probably the better way to go, considering the regulations. So these are some different certifications and accreditations you can get for your outdoor play space. I promise we're getting to offsite soon. It's just a couple more slides. This picture here is Rhonda's Nature Explore Certified Classroom. And there are other different kinds of certifications you can get. Again, Arifance is having their Nature Preschool Teacher Certification coming up soon. There's also Timbernook and Cedar Song and NACE, of course, and then the National Association for Family and Child Care. And there's also this program called an Eco Healthy Childcare. Rhonda, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I got that certification for my indoor space. I'm not sure how long ago. I think it's been at least 10 years. And it's basically a checklist of that you are attesting to. You will follow these practices so that your indoor environment is eco-healthy for children. And one thing I will say, one of the great perks with this certification is it highlights to your families to the importance of keeping the environment eco-healthy for the children. And you also receive regular emails as a resource that you can share with parents. And they do have a website where your program can be listed. So if someone's looking specifically for a program that's eco-healthy, they can find your program on there. Okay, so in here is as Jessica said, I do have my outdoor classroom is a certified Nature Explorer classroom. Now, you don't have to get a certification to have a great outdoor classroom. I did this because I discovered it, I want to say about 11 years ago. And as I've previously stated, there weren't that many trainings for nature-based education, early childhood education for professional development. And thank goodness for Aerofans, because really that was the first organization that I found that was really the focus. And there were trainings that I could go to, I want to say in my area, even though I live on an island, I have to take a boat to get over there, but I could actually drive to them. So I was very excited when I found Aerofans. But back to the Nature Explorer. So I chose to do it because it was really one of the first programs that I saw that they had research-based, field-tested, and design principles and such. And it was a huge thing for me to help educate the families in my program, because I think the biggest thing for me when I transitioned to a nature, what I was calling Nature Inspired program, was really relaying the message to parents, like the importance of this type of education and why I was choosing to go this route and spend more time outside, and like feeling confident in what I knew and believed was best for children. But it did take me, a while to like build up that confidence to really speak about what I knew and believed, but to get it out in words. So Nature Explorer, they had done all this research, and I thought, this is what I'm going to do. Now, with that being said, I started it 11 years ago. I didn't get it certified till 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years this month. I think because my parents knew what I was doing. I was sharing the information with them from the beginning. So they knew the transition that I was making. They knew why, and I was able to share that research with them. And then I decided to finally do the certification, and I'll tell you, there are some major perks with this certification, and one of them is Nature Explorer will do a press release for your local newspaper. So say if you are just starting up a program, or if you are transitioning to this type of education model, it will go in your local newspaper, and those in your community will see what it is that you have, what you're doing, what you're offering, and that it's research-based, and that there is true value in unstructured nature play, because a lot of people didn't really think much about that back when I was first doing this type of program. There really wasn't that much to like back me up other than me showing pictures and breaking it all down myself. But it's great that nowadays it's a movement that's really exploded. And this here, one of the criteria, so you have to, there's like 10 or so different areas that you have to get that certification. And one is you have to have an entrance that defines your outdoor classroom so people know it is. And that's my certification sign that you do get also with that little plaque that says you're certified and the year that you were certified, and that you're committed to connecting children to nature. And there's our little muddy buddies that were actually out. I think it must have been raining early that day, and then they were drying. You can hose them down. That's a great thing about those. You can just hose those things down and get the mud off, and then let them dry in the sun. And then the picture on the upper right is the most recent addition to my outdoor classroom, and it's a jumping rock that my families gave to me as an end of the year gift. And they had my new logo that was created by one of my parents, etched into it. And one of my parents is a stonemason, so he was in charge of getting this, and he actually brought me to pick out the rock, and I chose that one because it has two places to sit, a place to jump off, and the children have turned it into a hair salon and many, many other things. Oh, another one more thing. You can check out my find out more about Nature Explore and see my specific outdoor classroom, Nature Explore outdoor classroom on their website. So another perk is that on the Nature Explore website, you do get your very own web page, so that if somebody is, Googling, looking for a nature program, and you don't have your own website, you can have a page on the Nature Explore website and that will pop up. So that's another perk. And every year, if you do the recertification, you update your information and you can put new pictures and such.
Oh, and this is just, this was a very small investment that I made about like 8 years ago now, to become a certified schoolyard habitat site. You just do a $25 donation to the national, well, it was quite a while ago. The amount of money might have changed by now, I'm just thinking. But you do the donation and you do the work. And the work is to create a habitat site for animals in your space, on your property. And you had to have 3 different kinds of food. You had to have a water source. You had to have a place for animals to hide. If there were any predators came around while you're near your bird feeders, the birds need a place to hide. And I was able to create this space, and you can see how it has grown from when I first planted it to now. And this garden happens to be located right outside my porch, and the kids are very much using it every day. If we play inside at all, we play inside on this porch. The kids get to look out the window and they see hummingbirds at this little hummingbird feeder, and all the different birds that come to the bird feeders. And I just added this, like Ron had mentioned earlier, this field guide. And I think the majority of the kids in my class can tell the difference between a goldfinch and a robin and a starling and a crow and a grackle and a blue jay and a cardinal and a female cardinal, because they spend so much time just looking out the window at this little garden that we created. And like the guidance to create a water source was part of the reason why we have a pond out there. I probably would have naturally instinctively gotten one. You can use a bird bath, but the birds use this pond all the time to drink, and the squirrels come over and drink too, which is really fun to watch, and my pets. But the sign is also fantastic. I display the sign like right at the edge of my property, and you can see that people who walk by my house stop to read the sign over and over. And it's really like a beautiful little sign and a beautiful little addition if you wanted to create a wildlife space in your garden. Okay, here we go. Outside, not not on property. So in New Jersey, we are allowed to take field trips, and I could take a field trip every single day if I wanted to. That is how we are able to get off property. And we are also allowed to take walks, neighborhood walks, such as I have a neighborhood walk policy, and it has a map. And in my policy, it says all the places that we can walk to. So I found a local forest in walking distance to my house. And you can see here that I use a wagon because it's family childcare. I have infants, toddlers, and school age children and preschoolers. So we use a wagon for the youngest kids who maybe don't want to walk so much. And then we go out to these natural spaces, in local natural spaces, and we visit them routinely. So getting back to the same little piece of forest once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, and watching it change as the seasons change is one of the most amazing things I have ever done with kids. And it's part of the inspiration about how we ended up being more nature-based. Rhonda, you want to talk about your spaces that you go?
So, so as Jessica was saying, she can get out in New Jersey, like considered field trips. So technically, for my program, it's considered a field trip too. So when parents sign up and fill out those state forms, and there's a section for field trips, I do list like all the properties that I know that I'm going to go to, because I really don't consider it a field trip. It's just part of our natural day, is that we do go visit these spaces beyond the site. And I have over the years I've narrowed it down to very, specific places that I tend to use over and over again, based on the seasons. I'll choose to go to certain properties, like if there's certain ones that I won't use, like right now, because it's mosquito-y. The marshes, there's going to have mosquitoes there, so we wouldn't go there. We'll go to another area, but we will go to the same spot over and over again, with the thought for kids to develop that connection to the land. And when I first started taking kids out, I don't think I was really thinking about the connection to the land. I was just thinking about them interacting with nature, being in nature. And then it was more that I learned, it was really truly when I discovered Cedar Song, the Cedar Song Forest Kindergarten program, and realized that, making the connection to like a specific place, and for the children to see that the changes that happen there. And so I started to visit very particular places with that in mind, for them to develop that connection. And we also document like the changes that the children's observations and the things that they see, and the learning is profound that happens. I do tend to follow, my philosophy is really a forest kindergarten ethos that I use, and that has changed over the years. It wasn't always that, but that's definitely what it's been, I'd say, for the past 5 years or so.
And Rhonda, you transport the kids in cars? In a car?
I do, and I have my own seats in my car. When I first started taking children out, the parents used to leave the seat every day, and I will tell you, it's a pain. It is pain. They're heavy, like if you have young children. But most of the kids that I have do fit in the booster seats, and I have mostly boosters, and then I had a couple like the big seats for the few children who are small. I have a mixed age model, which I really, really love. So usually half the group is first year students, and then the other half is either second or third year students. And I love that model, which I wasn't even planning on getting into it. But I love that model because the new children who are coming in are learning from those older children, from the older children model. And it's an excellent thing to have when you have an all natural loose parts outdoor space, because when those new children come in and they don't see toys, what they do see is those older children and how they work with those natural loose parts, and they pick up on it really quickly. I'll go quick here because I know we're losing time. So I chose these pictures, these specific pictures to highlight this property, that you don't have to have a woodland or forest area, this big wooded forest area, to get kids into nature. This is actually a park that is in town, and the picture on the left, that's a very small grove of trees, but you can see the children in there. To them, that's a huge forest, and they will play in that area for hours, and they create things, and they dig, and they build, and then they go up this little hill on the right-hand side, and where the little girl's sitting, that's a dead tree that is there. That is awesome because it defines a space in front and a space behind, and kids will make their houses, and they create all types of scenarios, and then they can also make mud. I do bring a bottle or two with water so that they can actually make mud while they're there as well. But you don't have to have the perfect spot. It doesn't have to be a forest or a woodland area. It can just be a little pocket park.
Yes, and that's exactly what I wanted to say in these two frames, is that when you're seeking out a place off-site to bring kids in nature, remember to think outside the box. Both of these, my name of my business is Riverside Rhymes. That's because I'm very close to a river, but I don't live on the river, and the river is mostly along the river is houses. So we only have very small access points. So if you can see the picture on both of these pictures, there are huge mansions on either side, but we found these little places that were public places. The place on the right is what they call a paper street. It's a street that's on paper, but it's not being used. They never paved it. and it leads to the river. So it looks like a meadow, and we call that the meadow, and there are butterflies there, and there is some shade there. If you look a little closer to the river, there's no shade. There's a nice hot sunny place that we play, and then we go down. That's where that same picture was, where the rocks were, where the kids were throwing rocks earlier. We walk down there, and then we have access to the river. This is not an ideal setting. People live on either side of this place, but even in this small space, the kids are able to find so much connection with nature. On the right-hand side, there's some honeysuckle bushes, which kids love to taste and explore, and they kind of climb behind them and create dramatic play spaces. And to the left here, this little beach that we're on is a very small access place it's called Dock Road Beach, but it's less than 20 feet across. And we are able to get to a sandy beach with river. That you can see that there is a pipe there that's a drainage pipe that brings the rainwater down from the street into the river. And the kids get to see how the sewer system works and to watch the water come down, especially like this was a rainy day again, and to access the river and to explore all of the natural world that lives right there, like crabs and fish and swans and geese and ducks. And even though these places are not like wild and free, there's still access points to nature. And lastly, we just wanted to talk a little bit about your indoor classroom if you decide that you want to have one. Rhonda, these are Rhonda's pictures to the left. Do you want to talk a little about what's on the table there, Rhonda?
Sure. So, yeah, my pictures of my indoor classroom. I do have a separate schoolroom, a separate section. When I built my house, I knew I was going to have a program. So I have a separate entrance, a separate bathroom. So parents, families never go in the regular part of my home. And I feel very fortunate to be able to have that. And like at the end of the day, it's like, okay, close the door and I've left work. Because for me, that's how it was going to work. Otherwise, I couldn't do that. But on the left-hand side, you'll see that's one of our nature tables. I have various nature tables, and that's our nature investigation table. And there's always like something seasonal, and this just happens to be when we have the monarchs. The families will bring in milkweed, or we'll have wildflowers, as long as they're not rare wildflowers. We don't pick those. But so there'll be magnifying glasses, and there you'll see the little wicker plate with the seashells, and there's some dried seaweed. The book that's there is actually a marine field guide for marine life on Nantucket, and the children will look up things if they want to. And then they also, the little boy that is holding something, he's actually holding, it's a fox grape that grows wild on the island. And then we set up the little label to say what it is. We've got like beech nuts, hazelnuts, and then beech nut cases, and various things that we find when we're out and that we'll bring in. So I think it's important to have stuff, that bringing some nature in to reflect that, it is a nature program. And I tend to have a lot of wooden and natural stuff. I do, my indoor space does tend to be a bit Waldorf style, even Waldorf aesthetic, and I just like to keep it really natural.
And Rhonda, there's a couple of questions here. One of them is about how you handle poison ivy or poisonous snakes and spiders. And I'm guessing that, that's where making sure that you take a training that's all about risk management and how to embrace those risks, and then how to also debunk, parents who might be more concerned about something than they need to be based on the measures that you can take to prevent injury.
Well,
so there's that piece. And the other question, which I know you'll want to address that. The other question is along a different line, and that is about if you took out any loans to fund your businesses. So I'll let you guys tackle those.
Well, I'll talk first about the poison ivy. And so when Jessica was talking about the parent handbook, in my parent handbook, I have a tick policy, and I also have information about poison ivy. So one of the first plants that the children in my program learn about is poison ivy and how to identify it. And, you know, leaves of 3, leave them be. And then we have some other rhymes as well. So it's really, really important that, you know, so we do have a lesson on poison ivy, because that's really important if you get a bad case of poison ivy, which I actually just had, and finally have gotten rid of. But educating the parents as well. So I will send reminder pictures and articles to parents about, okay, hey, it's in regards to poison ivy and in regards to ticks. It's tick season, because ticks, deer tick here on Nantucket is huge. Lyme disease is huge. I myself have had both Lyme disease and babesiosis, and it's no joke. So it's important that parents do tick checks daily, because getting that tick out, if there is a tick on a child, it's important to get it out as soon as possible. So it's really education with all of those types of things. We don't have poisonous snakes from what I recall. I'm pretty sure we don't. We don't have any poisonous snakes here. There are some, I think the only poisonous spider is a wolf spider, but I've never had any issues with snakes, or like when we see snakes, we're like, oh wow, that's cool. And like we'll see a garter snake, or we get to talk about cold-blooded things and why they're out in the sun. I hope that answers that. Is to have that. It's really important to have that information in your parent handbook, and to talk about those things when parents are first looking at your program before they sign up, so that they know firsthand that, yeah, there could be a tick on your child, and here's what you need to do. And when they do find one, when a parent comes back to you and says, oh my gosh, there was a tick on my child, and you can say to them, good job checking for ticks every day. And then they'll turn around and thank you for educating them about ticks and poison ivy.
And I will say that this is in different variations of you know, we do a lot of different trainings and a lot of different courses, and we always touch on risk management. And one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is to have a master list of what's in your area. And if you've never taken an inventory like that, it's a really great thing to do. Especially if you work with another person, but even just to, you know, create your own lookbook, go to your state Department of Natural Resources and ask, are there poisonous spiders? Are there poisonous plants? And get to know what those are. And that's very empowering for you when the parents have those questions. You'll know the answers. You will have done the research. So I would just say, if you haven't ever done a master list of any kind to survey what's on your property and what's you could find in your area, I would highly recommend that.
Yes, I agree with what everyone said. We also have tick checks in my house, and also I would say that I also do tick checks on the kids when we come back.
I do as well, Jessica. I neglected to say that I myself do a tick check at the end of the day. Now I'm not doing in the private areas. That is for the parents to do, because I will say I do a once over from head to toe, but they need to check like the private areas as well, because that's very important. And the gear that the kids wear when it's not summer, that stuff is excellent for helping deal with ticks and for poison ivy, because that layer is coming off and also like protecting them from the tick like climbing on them.
Yes, I completely agree. And as far as
what was the last question that you said, Monica?
It was about loans. Did you get a loan? So I'll just say that I did. One of the great advantages to doing or having a family childcare was that I didn't have a huge overhead just when I first started. So I didn't really need a loan, and I started small. One of these slides, I think we're getting to it soon, is about buying used. And I think that's really important when you're first starting out, to look for used toys and used items. I mean, I get used rain boots, used rain jackets from my personal kids, and I recommend to families that they go do the same, because it's much cheaper to buy things used. And that is how I started. You can see, like, for example, this middle picture is my classroom. since this picture, it's a long time ago actually, my daughter has grown quite a bit since then, but we were able to invest in a laminate floor. And so I had the original, in this picture I have the original carpets, but I didn't change that until I was ready financially to make that improvement. So when you first start, especially if you're doing a nature-based program, there's not so much that you need to buy. And if you do need to buy stuff, I recommend you buy used.
And I second that. I've gotten rid of so much stuff over the years, and I actually used to have carpet as well. That floor that you see there, that's fairly new. I think that is three or 4 years old when I put that in. But I didn't have a lot of overhead either. And the same thing, I started out small. So no, I did not do any loans. And like I previously said, I do a $75 a year supply fee. And I tend to use that for, it would mostly be like for replenishing like art supplies or anything that I need for the outdoors. But I don't use a lot of stuff anymore, and don't really have a lot of I've really scaled back. I've really scaled back. And that's one thing, when parents do come into my inside space, they will, the first thing mostly everyone says that visits my program is, wow, like this is, they love the feel of it, that it's not overwhelming, that the aesthetic of it is very calming, and that I don't have stuff everywhere. And I tend to rotate things so not to overwhelm children's senses with what's being offered for them to use at any time inside.
And, a couple other questions that are coming up. These are two separate questions, but one of them is about toileting or changing diapers outdoors. And the other is a more broad question about how does nature-based education work for children under 3, which is a very fun question, by the way, but I'll let you guys handle the toileting question and the thoughts on those under age 3.
So I don't have, well, the youngest that I have is my handbook in my website does say, my enrollment info says ages 3 to 5, but 2.9 and up will be accepted, if the child is developmentally ready. And because it's just myself, and because I do take children out, when I used to have children in diapers, that was very difficult. So I did change my policy that children do have to be toilet trained to come to my program. And I don't know how many years ago I did that. But for me, I found it really difficult for the amount of time that we were spending outside to have to change a child, particularly if I was out, say if I was out at a property for 3 to 4 hours. Now, the children do a nature pee, basically, and they get that down pretty quickly. But Jessica, I'll let you talk about the younger children.
Right. Okay. So you can see these are from my family childcare, and you can see in the picture I do have some young kids here. So we do, if we're going off property, so if I do a field trip, which the state would call a field trip, but if I go on a walk to a space outside my backyard, I will change everybody's diaper before we go. So that's the first step there, and encourage everyone to try and go to the bathroom before we leave the house. And then on the walk, part of the gear that I take is a first aid kit, and inside that first aid kit is a diaper for everyone who is still in diapers, and a diapering changing pad, the kind that you take, any mom has in their diaper bag, the portable flat diaper changing kit. And I just open it up and change everybody's diapers. I have disinfectant spray right there, and I use like Nature 7th generation, disinfecting wipes to sanitize the diaper changing pad for each kid. And that's how we do it. And I've never had any issues when we were out and about with any of the kids, giving me a hard time about changing their diaper outside. It's quick, it's fast. Even in the winter, when you think it's going to be impossible, you just tug those snow pants down, put them on the changing pad, and it's over in a jiff. The bigger kids, in my school, I have to say we don't do that many nature peas. I think it's because we don't stay out as long as Rhonda does. So usually nothing is too far away from home. If someone really has to go to the bathroom, we do that. But generally speaking, we just come back home. You know, it's about 2 hours or 3 hours that we spend off property. And with going before and going as soon as we come back, it seems to work out that I don't even need to deal with that. Now in the backyard, I have it's from Discount School Supply, a thicker outdoor durable changing pad that I also use with like diaper supplies that I keep outside, and I have like a little diapering station, and it's actually in a little basket that I have with everyone's diapers, with the wipes, the disinfectant spray, and now with COVID, there's also, well, I mean, there's usually hand sanitizer in there, but if there was just in the backyard, I might bring them inside to wash their hands when they're done.
And what I was going to
and-
say, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Jessica, go ahead.
No, that's it. That's pretty much it. That's how we do diapering. Oh, and then how do I deal with them in the woods? If I didn't explain this already, it's just the same thing. If the little ones, oh, what was the second question? How do you deal with toddlers in nature, Monica?
Yeah, it was just a more broad question about how does nature-based education work with children under 3?
Okay, so I have tiny infants all the way up to like toddlers and up to 3-year-olds. So with that group of kids, when I take them out into the forest, infants, I bring a stroller. If I have an infant, I bring a stroller and I push them, or I baby wear them. So I have a harness and I wear them while we're out on our hike. With toddlers, I tend to bring a wagon, and the wagon can hold a couple kids, up to 4, and I pull them when they have, so I have it available for kids who are just too tired to walk anymore. Because it often happens that they're very enthusiastic on the way into the forest, but when they're tired on the way home from the forest, they don't want to walk anymore. And I don't have enough arms to carry all those toddlers out. So I pull this wagon, and on the way out, they can ride in the wagon. And generally speaking, I let the older kids know that I'm going to pull the toddlers out. So and before we even enter the forest, I give everybody warning. Hey, remember, Jacob's only 2. He's going to need to get pulled out when it's time to leave. If there's an extra spot available, I'll pull you too. But if there's only room for Jacob in the wagon, he's the one who's going to get to go in. So there's no arguments later on, because the 4-year-olds may occasionally also want to get pulled.
Brilliant.
Okay. Oh, and so this slide I just included to show you that you don't have to have a classroom in a family childcare. You can just use your space. Your whole living space can be your classroom. Like what Rhonda has is really great. She gets to close the door. But if you're willing to do the cleanup in your home, you can use, the main parts of your home that you can see here. Like, I think that it's Christmas time. Clearly in the picture, we're probably making cookies, but it could just be Play-Doh. I'm not sure. And on the right, that's the porch where this is like our indoor space that we use with the kids most often. I actually also have a whole classroom in the basement, but I let the kids vote on where they get to play. And this porch is just such a wonderful place that they often vote to be here, even though there's a lot less toys.
And Jessica, I do think that the majority of family-based programs do use their home, their regular part of their home.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why you don't have so much overhead as a start.
Right.
At the beginning.
Right.
This, and we were saying before, like, in order to make a nature-based indoor classroom, looks just like any indoor classroom, except that you can choose to put a more natural inspired color scheme when you design your space. But really that's up to you. It's yours, it's your space, it's your program. You design as you see fit. And here's that slide about buying used. It's in the picture. That's a real tea set that I got off. Well, it used to be that you could only buy them on Moms on a Budget pages, but now I buy everything from Facebook Marketplace. And those are just real teapots, and the kids use them for a while. Eventually they got lost or they were broken, and I cleaned them up and we bought something else. But because I've made such a small investment initially, it wasn't like a big deal because I bought that whole set that you see right there for $2. So it's not like you're fully worried if the ceramic teapot falls to the ground on the wood. Then you just replace it whenever you need to. Okay, Ron, do you want to talk about the resources page?
Sure. So as we were mentioning earlier, a great place to get information, like really in-depth information. You can do webinars and trainings, but I do recommend checking out some books. And the Aerofans has a great resource page with various books. And excuse me, I highly recommend checking that out and picking out, one or two good books that pertains to what you're particularly interested in, whether it's documentation, risky play, or just an overall nature-based education, early childhood education, and what that means if you want to go deeper with this nature-based model. And if you want to find out information about specific models like forest school, forest kindergarten, nature kindergarten, or nature play schools. There's lots of different models, and if you want to get into the nuances of each one, you can definitely find books and articles and such with that information. There's a lot out there nowadays. So if you are starting something like this now, it's a good time. It's a really good time because there's so much information out there. And honestly, getting children outdoors as much as you can, even if you're just going to be doing your typical program, but you just want to be outdoors because of COVID, bravo to you. That's great. Any amount of time outside that you can extend is wonderful. And I applaud you for taking this.
Yes. And that is the end. That is all of our slides. Are there any more questions that you guys have?
Any more, Monica?
I'm not seeing any others. I'm guessing that people are probably processing all of this really incredible information. You guys covered a lot of ground.
Yes, I realized we took quite some time.
Went over.
Well, you know what? I mean, this is a really big topic, and I mean, again, it's like scratching the surface because you can go deeper in any number of directions.
Right.
So I would suggest that, for people that want to learn more, Jess and Rhonda left their contact information, and we will be following up. We're going to follow up with you with any other, I noticed somebody was asking about handbooks and policies, and we can see what we might be able to share in addition to the link that I sent. So we will download the chat, and we'll make sure that if Rhonda and Jess wanted to address something else in greater detail, that we'll be able to do that with a follow-up email. And just know that you will also get this recording. So if you want to scroll through, if you want to listen to any other parts, you definitely can. And it doesn't matter if you attended a little bit late to the presentation or not. There are always people that didn't join live, and we're just hoping to listen in at a later time anyway. So don't worry if you came a little late. We'll get the link to you. And with that, we say thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to hopefully some in-person training with you in the near future. Thank you so much, Jess and Rhonda, for sharing all this awesome information with the attendees today. It was really great.
Thank you.
Thank you.